Right. Good evening, good afternoon, good day, everybody that's here. Welcome along. Um, we don't read out everybody in the chat on this one because I generally start yakking away. Now, who's talking?
That's me. Hang on. All good. Done.
Um, as you know, we don't go through all the names on the chat here. We just say good day to everybody and let you carry on. Our two earwigs up in the corner there, Sid and Jay. Jay's got a flashing camera at the moment. He's going to turn the camera off so you won't see him, and you won't see him anyway in a minute when I go up. The first bit of this is just going to be all the technical stuff, how to hold it, how to mark it out, and all of that. So that could take a while. If you have any questions, just put QQ or question marks in the front of the statement so that the earwigs can pick it up and let me know. Thank you. All right, let's get going. Now, there's many different ways of holding a bowl on the lathe. I'll just go up on the full screen. There's as many ways of holding a bowl onto the lathe as what there is just about bits of timber these days. So, and I'll make myself full screen as well, won't I? So as I know where I am. Right. I can't see the chat now, so you have to rely on the earwigs. Just before I get going, Neil, yeah, the AAW has those seminars like with Simon Begg and that, but they are a costing thing. You've got to pay to get in them. So just be a bit wary of those Zoom ones. Chestnut have a free one, and Record Power have a free one with Theo Rampaloo as well. If you go onto the Record Power site, this is for Philip Clements. They've got the listing there to get into the Zoom meeting. So it's a pretty good one, actually. Rightio. Now, the first way is to hold it just between centres. So you get your two centres. I'll just knock this one out. Now, do not use a cone centre in the tailstock because all it does is bore a hole in it. And don't use a stab centre in the drive section. Always use a four-prong spur or a two-prong spur so that it actually bites. Also, whenever you're holding anything between centres, make sure you take the bark out so that it bites into the solid timber. And if it's got soft cambia leather, which is just under the bark, just knock that out with a chisel too. Now, the advantage of holding it between centres is that you can move it to get it orientated right. It's very handy if you're doing natural edge bowls and you want to retain the bark and you're trying to get the most out of it. You can move it backwards and forwards before you tighten it up, or you can swivel it this way and that way. Right, or backwards and forwards like that too to get the actual crown of it dead centre. Now, another way to hold it between centres is with this thing here. It's called a one-way big bite. And as you can see, it's only two prongs and a spike in the centre. And that thing really grips well in. Has somebody got a microphone or something on, please? You can do the same thing. You can move the timber around. The thing with this one is, if you've got a two-prong centre like this one is, so you get smaller two-prong ones like this one as well, put it across the grain. Because if you put it into the grain, it can act like a wedge and split the timber down the sides of it. The next one is the screw chuck. Now, this is a wood-fast screw chuck. The original one of these I had for 40 years until it fell out of the back of my truck 2 years ago, so I had to replace it. But this screw actually unscrews from here, and you've got a little face plate as well with it. Now, the advantage of these are modelled after the I think it was called it was made by Sorby, the Sorby 6-in-1 chuck, if I remember rightly. This is a proper Glacier screw. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but see how sharp these are? They're actually a parallel thread down there. They don't taper out at all. They are dead straight down the sides and they act like a knife and they hold very, very well. Now, Technitool and Vicmark, and for those in England, the Record Power SC4 also come with wood screws. This is the Vicmark wood screw. This is the Technitool wood screw. The Technitool is very close to being parallel, but it's still got a slight taper down the threads. The Vicmark one is atrocious in my opinion. It's really tapered off on the sides and it doesn't grip very well. At least that's my findings with it. And I've got more to say on that one later. The Technitool is definitely the better of the two, even if you've got to go and buy a Technitool one to fit into a Vicmark lathe. But it requires a 9mm drill, if I remember rightly. This one requires an 8mm drill. Then, of course, we've got the faceplate. You can get these from 3 inches. Oh, I've got 3-foot ones here, but most people don't need them. Good size is 3 to 6 inches for most work. Unless you're doing really heavy stuff, then it might pay to go to a 10-inch faceplate. Then we have faceplate rings. Some of these have 4 holes. Some of them have 6. I thought I had a 4-holer here. And all the chuck does is expand into these. My personal opinion is that every club should make new attendees or new members buy one of these, because I don't know of many clubs where people don't have a faceplate or something on their lathe and it's a club faceplate and they haven't finished it because they're a bit slower than everybody else and they take it home with them, and the amount of faceplates that disappear in clubs is amazing. So for about $3 or $4 they can buy a faceplate ring and it's theirs then, and it can stay there, and they don't have to unscrew it or anything else. They can fit it straight back onto a chuck when they come back at the next meeting date. Right, any questions so far?
Not yet, Robbo, but the Technitool screw is an 8mm as well.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not sure. Like I say, I never use them because I'd use the other ones.
So I've got one there, 8mm.
Now, the other way of mounting things, of course, is that you can use glue blocks on the back. If you've got very, very thin plates, like a block this size, for instance, you can put a faceplate on there. You can put your worm screw in there. You can pretty well mount it any way you like. Another way of mounting them is to drill a thing like that, and this is very popular with English wood turners. They drill an appropriate sized hole that the chuck fits into, and they just bring it out, a little mortise in there, drill it about 5 or 6 mil deep. I'll go into chucks a little bit more in a minute when we start doing stuff. As I said, I like my favourite weapon is the screw chuck. All it is in this case is a 1/4 inch hole in the middle, and just screw the thing on and away you go. Form the base to get your tenon and or mortise on the bottom of the bowl. Now, oh, I know where. Right, that's a 6 one. Now, when you're mounting a faceplate or one of these rings, always try to not align the grain. Just get a pencil for a second. See the grain's there on this one, the grain's down here on this one, and the grain's down here on this one. If you line up the grain, there's a good chance, like if I brought this one around to there, for instance, and lined it up with this one here, there's a good chance you can actually split the timber down there. So that just lessens the amount of thing. Now, if you've got a 4-ring faceplate, I'll just turn this over for a second. What you do is you offset it like so, so that you've got one hole here, another one there in the grain, and down there and down there. If you turn it around and line them up, there's a chance that you can split some timbers when you screw it in. Now, when you're mounting face plates, don't use these. These are chipboard screws, and as you can see, they've got a weak point right in here. These are a rolled thread, and they tend to push the metal up, and they create a weak spot down in here. Now, I don't know how many of these I've had to dig out over the years. Batten screws or tech screws for wood are absolutely fantastic. I myself use these for faceplates. They're a square drive Robertson screw. They're a proper wood screw, and they have to be good because they're named after me. So they're Saatchi screws, or Robertson screw is the name, the right name. They actually come from Canada. But even after using them for 3 or 4 times, I throw them out because it weakens. And just as a side note, I never use an impact driver to put them in. It is just a drill with, or a cordless drill with a screwdriver bit in them. So, righty-ho. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll just take myself off full screen for a minute, and you can mount the bowl onto whatever method you consider for yourself, okay? Oh, wait on. Looks like Rob CP's in. Yep. G'day, Rob. How are you?
Hello, I'm stressed as normal, as usual.
No need to be.
Okay.
It's all good, Rob. Robbo's got all his yelling out of the way now, so he's yelled at us. You'll be fine.
Right, I'm just putting the my faceplate. Don't know if you can see. Faceplate ring on.
Yeah,
Just do
right.
that. Just do that.
Now, did you hear what I said about not aligning the screws up?
Yes. Just put mute on.
Now, a word about chucks. I hope nobody was watching there a minute ago. No, you can't see me. That's good. Just get rid of all this stuff here for a minute.
There's a question in the chat.
Yep.
Chris Spinning Wood Dodger says, any need to pre-drill pilot holes?
In some timbers, yes. Like some of our Australian hardwoods, our desert acacias, it does actually pay to drill a small pilot hole for putting the screws in, because you can actually break the screws trying to put them in. Right, just get rid of this. Okay, Landy's using a screw chuck. Rob's using a faceplate ring. Adam's using a faceplate ring. Justin's using a faceplate ring. Good.
So as I learnt, Robbo, the one of the tricks with using the screw chuck is to make sure you've got a flat surface for it to bear on. Otherwise, you'll break your screw.
That's what I was going to say in just a minute. I'll just let them get it mounted up first. and then I'll go on to the next bit.
Robbo, I was just curious, is this too small for a blank this size? My screw chuck.
No, I'd probably use that as well
Right.
on a blank that size.
Okay, no problems.
Can you just mute, please, Rob? You've got a lot of background noise there. Tart. Rightio, ladies and gentlemen, look at the screen again, please. Now, as I've said 100 times, when you're putting a chuck in, put your spindle lock in, put your key down in between the open jaws, make sure it's seated right against the chuck, and tighten it right up. And then take your spindle lock off. Now, the woodworm screw on the Vicmark chuck, this is for the ones that use Vicmark chucks. They're not very prevalent in England. Most people seem to go for the Record Power SC4. Now, a lot of people think that it goes in just behind the jaws here. So you've got this much sticking out. I'll just zoom in a bit and move the camera across a bit. Ah, bugger. You got nearly 1.5 inches of thread poking out.
No, go out a bit more, Robbo.
Yeah, what I might do is...
No, that's good, mate. We can see that.
Right. You've got all this coming out. Now, this is a trap. If you do not read the instructions, that's exactly how you'll do it. What it actually does is slide in right back in behind the slides in the chuck itself. This is on the VM90 and the VM100. The 120, it does seat just behind the jaws here. Now you can see it's only got about 3/4 inch or 20 millimeters poking out. That's what it should have, not the whole thing out here like this. Now, as I said, this is why I like the Technitool one, because it has a groove around it. And it does, and it's got 4 flats on it. It sits in to the slides on the thing, and the groove lines up with the jaws on the chuck. As you can see, it's only sticking out 3/4 inch. That's why I like the Technitool one far better than the Vicmark one. Right, that's that. Now, whenever you're using a screw chuck, up until about, was never a problem until about 10 years ago, probably maybe 20 years ago. And I started hearing reports about people snapping off the screws here. They're just breaking them off from the thing. Now, as I said, in 40 years, I've never broken a screw chuck. So after questioning a few people as to why their screw chuck broke, what they were doing was getting a round lock like this, putting it onto the screw chuck. I'll just use the faceplate, and didn't have a flat spot on it. So it was rocking like this while they're turning it. And of course it causes metal fatigue in the screw, and it's got to snap it off. So if you're ever doing these sorts of things and you want the natural edge up here with the bottom down here, always flatten that off with a plane so that the faceplate or the screw chuck fits exactly flat on the whole surface. I'm lucky I've got a thickness and a jointer here, and any bowl blanks I can just run across the jointer to get one flat surface on it at least. So always be aware of that you've got to have a flat surface.
Yeah, I learned that one the hard way.
Now I realise that all of you have centred the timber already, but a square block like this, it's just a matter of getting a rule, corner to corner, and X marks the spot. Now to fit a faceplate on, you can have you can get fancy fancy little doohickeys that fit down in the centre there that you can put down onto the cross in there. Me, I just eyeball it and that's close enough. Or you drill a hole through there for fitting your screw chuck into. Now, if you have a round blank and the person that cut the round blank hasn't left a little dimple in the middle there where they marked it out, I'll move it up this way a bit. The quickest, easiest way to find the centre of that is not muck about with compasses or anything like that. Just get a rectangular piece of timber or a flat square, sit the corner down in the, sit the corner down in there. I'll just take this back a bit. Sit the corner against one edge, get a pencil, mark a line there, mark a line there, measure the distance between them and halve it. And there's your centre. Now, if it's a little bit out of shape, just do it twice, once or twice. But that's the quickest way I've ever found of putting centres in, to round blanks. Now, I'm probably going to cop some flack over this. But the reason that I've asked you for a square blank is because not everybody has a bandsaw at their disposal, for starters.
Question, Robbo.
Yeah, go for it.
So, Ninja Man, with softer woods, do you ever have trouble with stripping out the hole in the wood and maybe having to use CA or something to firm the hole up?
On a screw chuck?
On a screw chuck, I'm guessing.
Yes, I have. In fact, that blank there, the one that's the natural edge one, has got a stripped hole in it. And it's no use putting CA or anything down inside it. That's actually why I like the Woodfast screw chucks, because if you do strip that, at least you've still got 4 holes here to put screws through and use it as a face plate and use the screw as the centre hole. And that's what I have to do with that one when I get onto it. Okay.
And Ricky's rocket's he has a block of wood the size of the centre of face plate with a nail in it to find centre and the screw on, and then screw it on with the screws.
Yeah, there's various ways of doing it. Like I say, I just guess. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay, now, you're just going to watch me for a couple of minutes.
You might want to just zoom it back out a bit, Robbo.
Yeah, I will. Just hold on. Just getting myself set up here. Right. Now, if you have a square block like this and you start turning it, I've just got to have a slurp on my cup of tea here. That's as far as it'll go. I'll try the other camera, won't I? I think it'll be worse.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay. Right. Now, if you've got a square block, most people want to face across this edge here for some reason to get it down to round. I never bother about that. The risk that you run when you try and do it that way, so the chisel can come down there if you haven't got it quite right, and it'll just chip out big chips like that. And in some cases, I've seen it split right across, and suddenly you've got a chunk of wood flying at you. Now, normally when I'm turning bowls, I always wear a face shield. Doesn't matter how big or how small they are. The simple reason I cover myself in garbage. But I can't wear it with the thing. I feel uncomfortable with the thing. A better way to do it is to turn the tool rest across the face like that. And what you do is you start nibbling in like you're roughing down a square piece. Now the grain, this is all pertains to cross grain bowls. It's only, end grain bowls have only come into vogue in the last 5 to 7 years. I don't know why, but can't do much about it. So I'll just take that off for a minute. Get it down lower, that's it. Always lower your speed, stand off to the left of the lathe, away from it, out of the line of fire. Start it up. Now in the case of chucks, that was my knockout bar hitting the ground, don't worry about it. Always switch it off after a minute or so of running, particularly if you're going into a mortise on the timber. Into a faceplate ring, you're generally pretty right. And I check it to make sure that it's still tight. Excuse me. Now the way I take a bowl is I come here, I'll put it onto the anti-camera so you can see. Come in about half an inch or so, and I use this wing there. I don't worry about there. Like a lot of people get right over here like this and do this. Now this is why I say that I reckon lathes are made for left-handed people, because you can use your left hand on the handle, stand against the lathe, and all the garbage flies out into the workshop over there. It doesn't get all over you. Now what I do is I come in here and I start forming that corner there. Or the other way you can do it is what I call a plunge cut. So you can get to there and just push it straight forward so that you get it down to an even surface straight away. I never worry about running right from there across, just a waste of time in my opinion. This is all the garbage you've got to get out of the way. This is what causes the unbalance on the bowl. So just take it out, get rid of it. Now, if you feel uncomfortable doing a cut like that far off the rest, just move the rest around a bit. Bugger, I wish that had come back a bit further. No, not going to.
The other camera wasn't a bad shot though, Robbo.
That one. All right,
Yep.
Switch it off, move the tool rest around. Now, those that were watching before could see I adjusted the tool rest so I don't have to keep moving the actual banjo. All I've got to do is just move the tool rest around. Now, it generally stays about the same height. And a little trick, instead of paying $30 or $40 to get a nice collar, just get a hose clip. Just get a hose clip. There. Put it up there, tighten it up to the height, so that when you turn it around, it just keeps in the same place. All right. Now this is the evolution of a wood turner as a beginner. They've paid good money for this bowl blank. So they want to get it as big as they can. They end up with a shape like that. Dog bowl, or what we call them, are brake drums. Because they need it. Then they get a little bit of style, they round over the corners a little bit. And I think that's a bit of a design thing. So, the next thing that they do is that they come up from here a little bit.
Darren's commented that most beginners don't stall their lathe, or don't nearly stall their lathe.
Yeah, well, it's a funny speed adjustment system on this. That's why I knocked it up a bit, because it got better torque up there. And they sort of come up with that shape there. Now, then as they get a little bit further, they decide that they're going to do this. They're going to put an OG into it. About a couple of years ago, 20 years ago, the fad was for a bowl like this, called beehives. So you ended up with ripples like that. The OG is one of my favourite shapes in bowls. My other favourite shape is what I call a flute. I turn the lathe off to move the tool rest, as you can see. Now, as you can see, I very rarely use that back bevel like this. And it's probably because I turn a lot left-handed. I'm ambidextrous. And you'll notice that the tool is down at 45. It's 45 degrees to the work, 45 degrees downhill this way, and the flute's 45. Now I'm just going to run through these cuts here until you start turning, and then we'll get further onto them. Now, if you hold the chisel horizontal, I'll just change cameras again. If you hold the chisel like this horizontal, and you bring that bottom wing into contact with the timber, and do this, everybody thinks that is a shear cut. It is not a shear cut. It is a pure scrape, because this bottom wing here is horizontal. You've got to drop the handle right down low so that this forms a 45-degree angle here like a skew chisel, so that it slices the timber. And if you do it properly, and it's got to be less than 90 degrees to the timber. It must be less than 90 degrees through here. So, like that. If you get it around here, it's going to skip down the bowl. So you drop your handle down as low as you can. It's almost sitting on the thigh. And close that top thing up and just gently come along. That is a shear scrape. And you can see the little fine shavings coming off. There they are there. Now, another tool that you can do that with, believe it or not, is the skew chisel. As I say, we'll get into this a bit further on. Now, naturally, I can't use it on this particular shaped bowl because that's like that. But what you do, I can down here. So, again, less than 90 degrees to the work in here. And you're cutting in the center of the chisel. and the back of the chisel is actually lifted up. Wrong one. The back of the chisel is actually off the rest. So the blade is at 45 degrees. Off the rest, less than 90 to the bowl, and just cut it down in the centre. Oh, this one's blunt. No, here we go. That is not a good shape for doing a shear scrape with a skew chisel because it wants to bite in a little bit. And surprisingly enough, I find the best tool to do it with is a spindle gouge. Have the tool exactly horizontal, less than 90 degrees to the timber, and hold the flute at 45 degrees. I'll see if I can get it on this camera here. So the flute's down to 45, less than 90 to the timber. Now the reason for that is that if you've sharpened your spindle gouges, like I've been saying ever since we started, to a thumbnail grind there, when you've put that up to 45 degrees, look at the angle down here. It's 45 degrees to the cut, and it will slice a nice clean cut. Excuse me. Now, the advantage of shear scraping is that you can go both ways. So you come up here like this. You can also go backwards. And it's called a shear scrape because it's cutting. It's better to be called a shear cut than the scrape, really.
Is there any bevel support on that type of cut?
Sorry?
Is there any bevel support on that type
No,
of cut?
absolutely none at all. I don't know if we can get it. You can see where the bevel is here. Here's the bevel down in here. So it's well away from there. The secret is to keep it less than 90 degrees to there. If you get around to 90, it'll start skipping backwards like that. All right. Now I'll bring you all back onto screen and you can rough it down to whatever shape you like. Remember to stand off to the left when you turn it on, let it run for a minute or so, and then check your chucks. Start it off on the slower speed if you've got variable speed, and then speed it up. Boy, I sure buggered that cup of tea. It's full of garbage now.
Strain it through your beard, Robbo.
I was just thinking that I might have to strain it through my mouth. Bummer, I was enjoying that too.
Donald's commented he was always told never to use a spindle gouge on side grain, and I think he may be thinking of a spindle roughing gouge.
Yeah, spindle roughing gouges have no place on a bowl. None at all. Landy, always follow through with the cut. Follow it through until you've got nothing being cut.
Just a weather report. It's belting down with rain here now, Robbo. It's coming your way, I reckon.
Well, they predicted it. Landy, just everybody stop for a second. Now you have to imagine that this is square still. What Landy's got is this. She's got a thing like that. She's been working up to that and then stopping. Always follow through here, because what can happen is you can do this. Suddenly you hit that and you can get an almighty catch or split the timber in half. So always follow through to the outside edge or as close as you can. If you don't want to tear this back edge off, just come in a little bit from this edge, clean it off, and then keep going. But don't leave a big lump up in here that you're likely to run into. Same with you, Adam. Always follow it right through to the outside edge. Rob, you're going well. Justin, you're going well. Right.
Am I not going through to the outside edge then, Robbo?
No, you've got to go through to the outside edge. Yeah, take that right off.
Yeah, I just hadn't got down to the bottom, that's all. But yeah, okay.
Just turn your tool rest round. No, move a bit towards the top, Adam, and just get rid of the waste out of there first, all right? That's better. Get it right off, so you've got nothing solid to run into. It is perfectly safe turning square blocks of wood, provided you adhere to the rules. Right. Start putting your shapes in, whichever ones you want. And I don't want to see any brake drums, please.
So a couple of questions in the chat. Robbo, Rex B said, would a curved tool rest be a good idea on bowls?
No, I hate the things. I've never used a curved tool rest in my life. Oh, no, I'll retrain. The reason I don't use curved tool rest is because I had one for about 6 months. They're great if you're scraping or you use carbides, but they're no good if you use tools, like proper tools.
And then we had a comment from Axel. He tried your trick with the skew in relation to adjusting the fit on boxes from last week, and it worked great. Thanks.
Ah, my pleasure, Axel.
And then Darren has a question for Adam, wondering what timber he's using.
No idea, just something in a box.
Yeah, that's sort of what I do too. Adam, always follow through with the cut. Start forming the shape you want now, right from the get-go.
And Neil's commenting that everyone's using push cuts.
Yeah. Well, it is a push cut there, whether you're using your right or left hand. It's not a pull cut. To me, it's just a cut. Doesn't matter which way you go.
And Rex asked about the curve rest because he loves making bowls, and that's why he was asking.
Yeah. Landy, just try opening up the flute a little bit. Get it round to 45 degrees. Open the flute out a bit more, Landy. Twist it to your right, clockwise.
You trying to get my attention, Robbo?
Yes, open your flute out. Just sit it on the rest. Right,
Yeah.
that's about where it should be, like that. When you
Or I'm
start
going
turning,
this way.
yeah, you've got it down like that. You've got it completely shut. 45 degrees across the flute. That's it. Good.
Okay.
You
Sid,
should
if
notice.
Sid, if you can throw a comment up if you want my attention, I can see the chat come up easy, which means I'll notice and stop quicker. Sorry, can't hear you.
No
with the
worries,
trend
mate.
on.
I'll do
Right
that
out.
for you.
I just can't hear you because I'm a respirating trend thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
All right. Anything else before I keep going?
No, just give that a try first and see how you go.
All right.
Well, Neil's commented that you were doing the straight in cut, Robbo.
Yeah. Right, just tell Landy for a second. I need her.
Yeah, is that better?
Right. Notice the shavings coming off
Yeah.
rather than the
smoother.
dust.
Yes.
Right. Just everybody stop for a second, please. Right, okay, that's all right. Rightio. Everybody just watch the screen for a minute. See the flute here? That flute should be at 45 degrees, like that. That's shut, that's open, 45 degrees is halfway between. The reason for that is that you look at the tip up here. This wing here, if you close the flute down, it's actually scraping, it's not cutting. And all you're doing is relying on this here and you're just doing a scraping cut. As soon as you turn around to 45, the same as in a shear cut, it starts cutting on this front wing because this part down here is nearly 45. Now, the difference is on an Ellsworth grind or something like that. You've actually got to roll it over a bit further towards closed, and I'll get into the explanation of the chisel shapes a little bit later. But always have that flute at 45. Like I said, it's the 345s. 45 degrees to the timber, 45 degrees down towards the floor, and 45 degrees on the flute. Okay, carry on regardless. That's a good cut, Rob. Justin, just pull the tool around a little bit more towards the headstock, the handle of it. That's better. Now you're cutting just off the tip, not with the whole wing. And the handle's got to be down nearly to the floor, towards the floor at 45 degrees.
I'm finding if I do that the bowl gouge itself ends up way up here. Do I need to drop the tool rest further, do I?
Well, you should be above center. Like, not the tool rest, the tool should be above center. Just give us a look at the tip of the chisel.
Yep.
Just give us a look at the tip for a minute. Turn it on its side. Yeah, right. Yeah, you just cut just off the tip where you would normally on a gouge, all right? Yeah, not right up the wing.
Okay.
So just the side angle that way. Right, that's looking pretty good, Landy. How you going there, Rob? He's got a way to go yet.
It's going slowly, and it's chisel wants to bounce a bit when it gets to this bit.
Yeah, just plow through it. It's waste. Get rid of it.
Right, okay.
Landy's going for an OG by the look of it.
I reckon that's because you said it was your favourite, Robbo.
Rob's got some nice ribbons coming off there.
Yeah, it has. I've been watching it. Now,
Darren will be jealous.
Rob, just pull the handle around a little bit towards you to make the cut a bit deeper. That's it. Remember, the steering's in your right hand. Even better, it's a wooden steering wheel.
Robbo,
Yep.
I just had a I don't know what happened. I was doing this bit, and when I got to here, there was not a bang exactly, but I don't know if it tore some out. Oh, I don't think it was a catch though.
You've hit that knot. There's a knot there.
That knot. Yeah, and there's one here as well. I know there's that one, and there's one. It must have been that bit. Okay, right. Thank you.
Landy, you've got to... When you're doing that, you've got to get the flute right on. I'll just get myself up here.
Yep.
You've got to get the gap between that top wing and the bit of timber should be about the thickness of a 5-cent piece, okay?
So I've got to close the flute over further. Is that what you're saying?
That's it. It's nearly shut. Right, now everybody just stops for a minute and just watches up on the screen for a second, please. And I'll run through that again. Right, you stopped, are you, Landy?
Yeah.
Right, okay. I had a big argument with a bloke once who was very well known in the wood turning fraternity. He reckons this is the most dangerous cut going, this shear cut. I think it's the safest. So you've got the flute completely shut like that, just about. Now, even if you roll it too far, it is impossible to catch. It cannot catch. If you open the flute right out like that, yes, there's a good chance that you might have a catch. But by closing the flute down, keeping the handle down at 45 degrees, less than 90 degrees to the timber, it can't help but cut a nice fine cut. So the top wing is nearly touching, and you're cutting, you're just using just off the tip here. Not up on the wing here, but just off that tip. You're not cutting with the tip, just off it. You get it? Just off the tip. Right. Get it down to round and get it to smooth, okay?
Robbo, is the shear cut the best cut to deal with tear out?
Well, yes and no. Depends how deep the tear out is.
This piece of wood is shocking. My Bunnings sleeper is obviously not the best one for turning, so it's terrible, but...
Oh, well, it'll be good practice to get tear out. Out.
Okay,
I
I'll
noticed
keep
you got
trying.
the piss running right through it, Landy.
Yeah, it doesn't help, does it? That's the whole... All of them are that way. They must make them that way. All right, I'll keep going.
Lovely ribbons coming off, though.
Yeah, Rob's going well there. You're getting fine shavings there, Landy, so that's not bad.
Sorry, Robbo, what was that?
You're getting fine shavings, that's fine. The surface improving?
A little, yeah. It feels like I'm getting more dust than shavings, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that could be the timber too, but just
Okay,
Keep
I'll
going.
keep practicing.
this I'd say is going to be a two-parter, all right? So we'll be doing the thing again next week too, I think.
I'm not sure what I'm doing with the shape. Am I putting a 10 in?
Right, don't get too far ahead. Just get that smoothed out, Rob. And you can
It's
stand.
sorry, it's just I'm struggling with the shape. I've got some tear out here. A piece
Oh,
that
that-
knot flew out, and
Yeah,
it hurts in the arm,
that's-
and it wasn't that bad at all.
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
Right.
At the moment,
Okay.
you can always reduce it. You can always reduce the height in a minute if you have to.
Okay.
So Darren's commented, we've seen Rob come from a rather timid term to one who is now really advancing well, and it shows he's been listening and putting in the practice.
Yep. And that's what it's about. Practice.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Right, you can sand that all up if you like. That's fantastic, Rob. I saw that fairy down coming off it, which is what you want. All right, when you've got it sanded, just stop and then tell me when you've finished. Now, as a general rule, you cannot sand out, tear out. You got to, if you're getting tear out in a bowl, go and sharpen your chisel and do a couple of passes. With a shear cut. The shear cut is actually the hardest on chisels of the lot because it bluntens them in one or two passes.
So Darren's commented again, knowing how much easier this is one-on-one, I really wonder how much further Rob would be if he could have one-on-one hands-on with Robbo.
Yeah, it's a bit hard over the internet because I can't adjust the chisel or anything. Don't worry, I've tried. I've nearly punched out the screen on the computer a few times.
You need like a Star Trek version of the beam me up so you can just pass your hand through the screen, Robbo.
Yeah, that'd be real handy. But geez, wouldn't it freak out the audience?
I don't know about the audience, but I think it'd freak out Rob and the other turners as the hand suddenly appears there grabbing their chisel. And Ricky's put a comment in, Robbo has to keep his cool and not swear. Robbo doesn't swear.
I very rarely swear, actually. Well, not in things like this anyway. Doesn't achieve anything. Okay, you got that sanded up, have you?
Mostly happy, yep, pretty good.
Adam?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. One more grit.
How about you, Landy?
Mine's not great. I don't know if you can see.
That's all right, Rob. Not particularly worried about it at the moment.
Right, okay.
Right.
I'm pretty much there if you. Oh,
Okay. Now, a neat little trick. Just look at the screen again for a minute. Rob, can you just mute your microphone, please?
Sorry.
That's all right. Right. Now, glue sticks are very handy things. If you pinch the glue stick here, hold on, I'll get it on the other camera so you can see it easier. Pinch the glue stick here, push it down into there, put it to there, put a bright light behind it, and you can see whether the curve is even or not. If you've got a lump, it will show up with a light gap underneath it. Like, I know there's a lump here, for instance. There. You can see it across the top here. So, if this, and it's got to be an even curve all the way around, so I would work on that. And the best way of working on it, and this is about the only use for a carpenter's pencil in my place, is I'd mark it here and here, and start the lathe up and colour it in. Like so. And then using a shear scrape, you don't want to take any out of here because you create a hollow. You don't want to take any out of here because you'll create another hollow. So all you're doing, it's like a grader grading a gravel road. All you're doing is taking the tops off. So very gently. Just even out the curve like that. So you get a nice flowing curve all the way down. Another little lump just here. Now, another trick is that if you want to feel lumps, turn the lathe off and look away from the piece that you're looking at and use your hands and rub up. Your fingers are far more sensitive to lumps and bumps than what your eyes can see. And if you feel a little lump somewhere, there's one just there, just mark it with a pencil and take it out. You normally do all that before sanding, but I just thought I'd let you go there for a minute. Right, now, we're going to put a tenon on this. The safest way to put a tenon on bring your tool rest up to centre height like this. I use the point of my skew and just mark a little dimple in the back. Wait on, I'll put it on the other camera. Just put a little dimple in the back here like this. And then get a pair of dividers, if I can find them. Now, I know that chuck that I'm using at the moment is...
You want to go full screen, Robbo?
Yeah, sorry. Right, so I've got my little dimple in here, you can see it there. Now, if you want to, you can measure it out with a rule. But what you do is you chuck, like the SC4s, for instance, of 50 mil. So you put your dividers at 25 mil. Sit the point in the hole there and just bring it round until you get a mark on the outside like that. Now, you can open these out to 50 mil. I just find it's quicker to do that. If you open them out to 50 mil, make sure that this back leg here is not touching the timber. I'll just change cameras again. Make sure that back leg is not near the timber. And you just line up the two lines. For those of you that have seen the Dam Busters movie, it's like the two searchlights over the lake where they tried, over the dam where they try to get their height. You've got to make them meet in the centre. If you get it too far out here, it's going to leave a line outside the thingo. So mark your tenons first, depending on your chuck, whichever chuck you're using.
Robbo, just a comment. Did you actually measure that, or is that because that line looks way too big for that chuck?
It is. That's 25 mil. That chuck, the chuck I'm using, I think is 40. Oh, I can soon tell. I can measure a faceplate ring. That'd be the sensible thing to do, eh? This is a Vicmark chuck. Yeah, it's 45 mil. So if I go to, no, sorry, it's bigger than 45. That's the internal diameter. Get my trusty verniers. It's 40 mil on the, it's 40 mil inside, that's right. So I generally go about 42, set the calipers at about 21. You happy now, Sid?
No, I wasn't unhappy before. I just was wondering whether you were exaggerating it for demonstration purposes or whether you'd actually measured it.
No, I hadn't. I actually set it up for the Technitool chuck.
Okay, so Rob from Copperleal, is this the first bowl turning for most of the students today? He really loves turning bowls.
Yeah, no, most of them have turned bowls before. This is the way I do them, that's all.
But this is the first bowl tutorial out of the series. The rest of it's all been spindle work.
Yes, yeah.
We got 32 watching at the moment.
Thanks, Joe. And I've been going about an hour and a half, or close to an hour and 20 minutes. Right. Now, what chucks has everybody got? I know that Landy's got 2 inches. Yeah,
You've got the Technitool, 50 mil jaws.
that's 50 mil, yeah. Rob, what have you got?
The chuck is an SK80, and I'm not sure what the size is. I think it might be about 50 millimeters. I'd
Right.
guess.
Mark your tenon at 50 mil then.
I've marked it, sorry.
And Adam's marked his out. You've marked yours out, have you, Justin?
Yeah, mate, I have.
Right. Okay, good. Now, this is a trap for people. I'll just get this and grab this just to sit it on the layers here. I hope we picked up there. Rightio, just focus your attention up here for a minute, folks. The formation of your mortise or tenon is critical to how successful you'll be with the chuck. If you don't get the tenon or the mortise right, you can get into a lot of trouble. Now, Technitool, on all their standard jaws, this is their 2-inch jaws, have a chuck. The inner jaw for a tenon comes out like that. It is parallel with a little thing here. People try to turn a tenon, it's got to be a parallel tenon like this. And here's the edge of your bowl here like that. They put a little groove in here. It's the worst thing you can do. Don't ever do it. Because what this relies on is that when it tightens down up against this face here, it pulls back. It uses this little dovetail thing here to actually pull it in tight. Now, here's the back of the bottom of the jaws. The register for the tenon is on this face here, down there and in there. It should never bottom out down in here. It should be a good 2 mil away from it. And this face here on your bowl should be flat, or it can be a little bit concave. It gets 40% of its gripping power because of this little piece here against the face of the jaws here. If you leave it out, if you've got this rounded out here like that, and it's only gripping on here, 99% of the time it is going to fly out of the chuck. Now, Vicmark are different. Vicmark have a dovetail. Here's the back of the chuck. Grossly exaggerated. Oh, that'd fall off that jaw. But the same thing, it seats against the face of the jaws here, does not hit the bottom. But if you get too big an angle on your tenon to go into there, like this, and this is grossly exaggerated, I know. If you get it like that, the chuck is only going to grip just on this little point here. This angle here is actually only about 7 or 8 degrees. It's not very steep at all. The way I generally do it is form it with a skew chisel and just take it a little bit off flat and get it down, because it'll compress into that. But the same thing, always make sure that you've got 2 flats there for the jaws here to seat against there. And start your bowl out there. Okay, is that all clear? So always check your jaws, like your shark jaws or your gripper jaws are actually parallel the whole way, because they got little serrated teeth on them, like that, that grab hold of the timber. Shark jaws, gripper jaws, whatever name the company feels like calling them. So you can form your tenons. The tenon only needs to be about 6 to 8 millimeters long. 8 millimeters is preferable. Actually, what I'll do is I'll show you how I do it, and then you can go ahead from there. Right, so I've got my marks. This marker is for my jaws here. It's only 40 mil. And this is what I actually don't like about the Vicmark standard jaws. They are too small in my opinion. The Technitool at 50 mil give about another 30% holding power. So I always work on 1/3. If I've got a 6-inch bowl, then a 2-inch jaw is great. But once I get up to 10 or 12-inch bowls, I switch to a 90 mil chuck so that it's got a good grip, because you can form the base after you've turned it. Now, the way I do it is I just come in, doesn't have to be exact on that line, just get it close, like so. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can get your skew chisel and come in from the end here and just slide it across. And you keep it straight across the face there. And it's a scraping cut. I'll get it onto the overhead again so as you can see.
Should we be below centres like that, or should we be on centre?
I should be on centre. I'll just drop the tool rest now. All right.
No worries.
So, and that gives you a little angle in there, like that. And it gives it a nice flat surface. This area in here must be clean. That where it joins the base of the bowl, that tenon has to be nice and clean in that corner. If you've got any garbage in it, it can disrupt the whole thing.
So Darren's
Okay.
commented he has a tool ground to the angle of the Vicmark tenon, which makes it easy.
Yes, you can buy a Robert Sorby tool or a Technitool tool for $75 for doing that. I find the skew chisel works pretty well.
Because we're going straight tenons, not dovetail, would we use a thicker parting tool? Would that do the job as well?
Well, yeah, you can use a parting tool. I must admit, I still use my skew chisel because it gives a nice flat surface back in here.
Yep.
Parting tool is not wide enough to get a wide. It's got to be at least 1/4 of an inch wide. Or if you want to get really technical, a 1/4 inch annulus, all right?
I'm just thinking of the
After I
1/8
said you
tenon
didn't
to the
swear,
base.
Robbo.
Annulus, I said.
Oh, sorry, my mistake.
Now, before you take faceplate rings or anything off, always check that it's going to fit in the chuck. You just got to be careful, Rob, that you don't curve that surface out. Yeah. I can see it, Adam. Right, when you get your tenon formed, just turn it round the other way. Put it into the chuck. If you've got a faceplate ring on it, you can leave the ring on it for the moment.
So Tim from TFTs, you've inspired him. He's got to run because his lathe's calling him.
Oh, yeah.
And Neil's commented not to forget to put in the centre dimple, guys.
Yeah, well, it should be there if they marked it out the way that I showed them. That does become critical afterwards. Make sure you got that centre dimple in the middle of that tenon. Because that becomes critical later.
So if it's suited nicely, should we take the ring off now?
If you've got it reversed, yep, and the chuck fits.
I reckon Landy's done the best value adding to a Bunnings sleeper that I've seen for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, although they do make good firewood.
Not if they're treated.
No, well, that's true.
Axel's asked, he's interested if Robbo has a preference on bowl gouge sizes and brands.
I'm going to go into that in a minute, actual.
Everybody in the chat seems to be predicting the future at the moment.
Yeah. They must all have their crystal balls out tonight.
Rob, is yours just a bit of pine?
It looks like it.
It's spotted beach.
Beech.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I take this off?
Yes, take your faceplate ring off now if you like.
Okay.
Ricky's Rockets comment, well, no one can predict when we're coming out of lockdown.
No, my crystal ball doesn't enter into that one, Ricky. Unfortunately.
I don't know if you recall, Robbo, I said I had well, it's not a pallet, I suppose. It's a frame that a mower conditioner from a case mower conditioner came on with big 8x4s and 6x4s on it that I thought were pine.
Oh, yeah.
They're not pine. They're way heavier and denser than pine, but I don't know what they are.
Right. Okay. Now.
So, Robbo,
Yes, Landy.
what do you do when you've lost your key for your chuck? I can't find it.
Panic.
I must have put it down. I cannot find it anywhere.
It's behind you.
Because Robbo told you
Is
off for
it-
leaving it in the chuck.
That's right.
Is it in your? Is it amongst your shavings?
I've just had a look. I'll keep hunting. Because it's not an Allen key, so I don't think I've got anything else that'll fit it.
No, it's a square and it's not 3/8 either.
I won't ask how you know that, Robbo.
I've got one. I'll just wait a minute for Landy to find her chuck key because she can't do anything without it. Now you put that bowl down the back. Go and have a look where you put the bowl.
Have you
Well,
got
yeah,
another
that-
chuck? Have you got another chuck, Landy? Just take that one off.
No, she hasn't. Because I yelled at you to take the chuck key out, and you walked towards the back of the shed with where the other bowl went to.
No, can't find it. I'll keep looking. You better keep going because of everyone else.
All right. Now, I've always found it doesn't matter to a large extent how careful you make the tenon and everything. As soon as you reverse it, the thing runs out of true a little bit. Even if you use a mortise, I've always found that it runs a little bit out of true. Might only be a little bit. This one's a fair bit, as you can probably see there. Got a bit of wobbleosity in it. And that's the reason that I never finish a bowl completely on the outside until I've turned it round and put it into the chuck. So just see if they're running through or not. Probably make a damn liar of me now. No, just start the lathe up, Rob, you'll see it. Yeah, got a little bit. How about you, Justin?
Feels good. I
Sorry?
don't know if I put a gauge close. It feels good.
Okay.
I don't know if I put a gauge close.
Yeah. Now,
You found it,
if
Landy.
it does, yeah, if it does run out, just do another shear cut up there with the gouge just to true it up before you do anything else. Nothing looks worse than a bowl with a thick side on one side and a thin side on the other.
Found it. All good and running not too bad, Robbo. And put the chuck back in its special hole.
Right.
Key.
Yeah, don't let Robbo rattle you next time, Landy.
No, he didn't actually. It had fallen down behind my lathe in the shavings when I used it before. In the middle of that, I had a 12-year-old come out and say goodnight as well, so that didn't help.
Bloody kids.
I think tonight I was technically not given permission. I was kicked out. My other half wanted to watch the football, so...
Well, you're probably in a better spot
The
anyway
Dogs
then.
were winning the last message, she said, my brother.
Well,
Who's winning?
I could say that sounds like a fair deal to me.
I don't care too much about the football as long as Port Power lose.
I'm not into football either.
Yeah, my mother is though, and she goes for Port Power, so.
Right. Now, after you've run it for a couple of minutes, check the chuck again to make sure that it's tight. You cannot check the chuck enough. You'll be surprised at how it comes up because it's compressing the grain and everything behind it, particularly if you're turning wet timber. Okay, now we're going to leave it there for a minute. Put my little table back on there again. All right, who thieved it?
I reckon it was Landy.
Yeah, could have been.
Or she put it down near her key.
Yeah, it was with her chuck key.
Yeah, it's over
Oh,
the back of the shed with that other bowl.
Right. Now, so far I haven't mentioned chisel shapes and all that sort of thing, but I'm about to now. So if you've got a chair, pull it up and sit down.
Full screen, Robbo.
Yep, about to in a second.
Nope, Justin's comfy. I'm comfy.
Yeah,
I've got
he's
a big
comfy.
chair.
Now, hello, I've lost my texture colour somewhere. Where you going to? There it is. Now, this is an Irish grind. There's the bottom of your flute there. All my chisels, by the way, with the exception of a couple, which I'll get into later, are all sharpened at 45 degrees. So we have a 45-degree bevel up there, and then we've got the wing that comes up here, sharpened down around there like that, and there's the top. Now, the preferred method of sharpening that, this is an Irish grind or a swept back grind, as distinct from what people think is a swept back grind or an Ellsworth grind. It only goes back a certain distance, back to there. Once it starts getting back there, they're special grinds, which I'll get onto later. Now, the ideal that everybody says is that this should be curved. Not quite like that, but like that. Now, I prefer it to be straight down. The worst thing you can do is to get it hooked like that. Now, most of the grinds on these bowl gouges only came into being in 1970, believe it or not, by Peter or Roy Child. I can never remember who the father or who the son was. And he, in conjunction with Henry Taylor, developed the bowl gouge. And it was called the super flute. That's what this one is. Now, it's a parabolic curve. So, you got your round bowl gouge like so. It's got a parabolic, almost a catenary curve down in there, as distinct from a V curve or a V groove, which is very narrow down the bottom here. And then there is also a U-shaped bowl gouge, which is shaped like that. So there are your three flute shapes. There are a few other manufacturers, particularly Chinese ones, that alter that around a little bit. Now the V flute is very, very hard to sharpen into a swept back grind because it wants to do this all the time. P&N tools are fantastic tools, but they use a V-groove like that. And you invariably get a little bit of a kickback on this point here, like that, little hook in it. Now, that hook can be handy sometimes if you're doing vases where you've got a parallel side like this down there. You can run that right down there and then sweep along the bottom and get a nice sharp corner down in here. But that's about its only use. Now, normally, as I said, I prefer a straight grind down there rather than a curve like that. Because if you put a curve in it, your entry cut is made by having the flute completely shut and just the tip touching it. Once you get that started there, you've got somewhere to get the bevel onto, and then you rotate it around and open the flute out to 45 degrees. You'll see some people when they're trying to start and it skips back. Now, the main reason it skips back is because there's a slight curve here and they're hitting the chisel up here, not on the exact nose, because they haven't got it round far enough, or they've got it round too far sometimes. So that's the reason I like a nice flat side, like a straight side like that. So this is an Irish grind, 45 degrees on the bevel down here and back there. Now you'll notice that the side grind here doesn't curl over the top. It's nearly vertical. With the flute. Now the Ellsworth grind is a totally different beast. This is an Ellsworth grind. You can see it's got a very short bevel on it. It's actually 60 degrees, if I remember right. It's either 60 or 30, depending on which way you measure it. I can never be bothered trying. It's a very narrow flute. Again, it's done on a super flute or an a parabolic curve. And the wings go right back, but they curl right over the top, like that. Don't know if you can see that in the camera or not. They're not straight up and down like that. They curl right over the top. So naturally, when you're trying to use this to get a cut, you've got to bring it over further to get it to cut on this section down here. I don't use the Ellsworth grind much. I use it only for demonstration purposes. The other thing is that you can see how far a curve it's got down the side of it here. And that traps me every time. I personally don't like the thing, but for a shear scrape, it is absolutely fantastic because you've got such a long wing down here that you can just get it into there and run it back along it. And you can keep the flute just virtually shut because you've got to get it to cut. Now, any questions so far?
Comment from me, there's nothing in the chat yet, Robbo, but a comment from me is a lot of the YouTubers that I'm watching seem to be using that extreme Ellsworth grind, or even more extreme than what you've got there.
Yeah, I know. And they're wondering why they're having a little trouble. Like I've got an extreme one here. This one here. This is the one I use for doing egg cups and things. Still 45 degrees on the bevel there, but the wings are cut right back. That's me thing. Now, the other thing that you've got to avoid when you're sharpening is if you've got your shaft down here, like this, and where it comes around the front here like that, with your flute down here. This nose piece here, if you get it to a point like that, it's like the spindle gouges. It virtually becomes uncontrollable. Now, this will sound strange, but that nose rounding there is equivalent to about the radius of what the bottom of the flute is. So you've got your flute down in here with a curve in around there, and that nose should be just about the same as that. So you end up with a round nose like that. And you'll notice on the Ellsworth, it's a lot tighter. Whoops. It's a lot more pointy than what that other one is. Now this is a 40-40 grind. It's touted by Stuart Batty at the moment. It's 40 degrees down along the sides here and a 40-degree bevel angle here. It is a good chisel to use. It's not much different than what mine is with the swept back or Irish or Celtic grind, whatever you want to call it on it. This is I use sometimes for a finishing cut because it's a slightly lighter one. This is a 3/8 bowl gouge in English terms, a 1/2 inch in American terms.
So I got a comment and a question. So Flicks commented she uses the Ellsworth and loves it.
Yep. Yeah, I know a lot of people that do.
Yep. And Darren has questioned, are those Tormek recipe stickers on those? If so, can you please share them, Robbo? Thanks in advance.
They are Tormek recipe stickers. However, they're not exactly Tormek grinds on some of them. So they've been altered over the thing. Like you can read this one here, probably it says jig on there. I've actually made my own jigs to be able to sharpen these up because the Tormek settings weren't exactly what I wanted. Now, this is a traditional English grind. Notice very, very short bevel, a very steep bevel down here. It has a relief cut on the end here, a relief bevel there, and it is almost sharpened straight across like a spindle roughing gouge. It does come back a little bit because I prefer it to come back a little bit. Now, about 15 years ago, the Americans came out with a new chisel called a bottom feeder. And the world went crazy. Oh, bottom feeder, bottom feeder. And us old turners and the English turners, we snickered like hell because that is a traditional English grind. So the Poms knew what they were doing long before the Americans even thought of it. Now, what it's for is getting down around the transition curve in the bottom of a bowl because it's almost used with the flute completely open and right down. And because it's got the double bevel on the back here, it can get around, and a short bevel, it's only about 30 degrees. It can get around that bottom corner and you can just take it right along. On English oak, this leaves the finish that you've got to sand at 400 just to get the gloss off it if it's used properly. They're the most basic grinds. So that's about all I'm going to do on the grinding of the chisels. Are there any questions on that?
I've been reading them out as we went, Robbo, so
Okay.
I don't think if we missed any, someone can yell at me in the chat and I'll go again.
Because what we're going to do now is call it a night. I had a bit of an early morning this morning. I wanted to watch SK Crafts with Mike Walt, so I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning, and the brain is starting to get a fraction frazzled.
And they've even been behaving, Robbo.
Yeah.
No, Adam's on the Terps already, so he's done for the night.
Yeah, I saw that. So that's how we do the outside of a bowl, and that's the reason that the chisels are sharpened that way. And next week, we'll do the inside of a bowl and finish it off. And if anybody has any suggestions or want to seize, send me a message or something, and I will endeavour to cover it. So,
But not pen turning.
sorry,
But not pen turning.
I think
I was just about to.
in tutorial never.
I was just about to say, and Rob hasn't sworn at me the whole time, the last 6 lives.
And he
Robbo,
just
can I
ruined
just
it.
ask a question?
Yes?
My bowl gouge, my main bowl gouge is my dad's one that I started turning with, but I've forgotten the name of the jig. You know the jig I use, the red one?
Yeah.
This one?
It's a record power. Oh, yeah, the red jig, yeah. Yeah, the true grind.
To sharpen. But I've now got to the point, either I've been grinding far too much or maybe the bowl gouge, dare I say, wasn't very long to start with because Dad had it for years ago, where when I put it in the jig, it ends up on this piece here, so it slips if I'm not careful. So at what point is a bowl gouge too short and thus you need to replace it?
Generally when it won't fit in the jig, but there is a little trick you can do with that.
Yeah.
Now, what projection are you using?
Well, I'd like to say whatever you put on it to start with at the start of last year, but I'm probably unrealistic if I say that because I've probably buggered it since then. But
Is it 50 mil sticking out from the jig?
70.
No, it should be 50.
It's whatever we set it up at. Hang on, I'll check. No, you're right. 50, my bad.
Okay, rightio. There is a little trick you can do.
Yep.
It requires steady hands
Yeah.
and the grinder. Now, where is it? Wait on. I might have chucked it back on the bench, I think. Oh no, this one. What you do is grind a flat that lines up with a flute down there, back to the handle, so that the jig has something to sit onto down there to keep it in place.
Okay.
All right? Like I say, it requires a steady hand to get it, to keep it even across, but it's easy enough to do.
Do you have a metal working vice, Landy?
No.
Or can you find someone who's got access to one? Because I had to do one, and I found I sat it through in the metalworking vice with a bit of wood on top, and flushed the top of the channel up to the top, and then just ground off the bit that was proud above the vice, and that allowed.
You mean ground it off with an angle? Sorry, Sid. You mean grounding it off with an angle grinder as such?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I don't have an angle grinder, so that's all right. I'll have to have a think about it, or maybe if we're ever out of lockdown, I'll try to make do in the meantime. And if we're ever out of lockdown, I'll come out to you, Rob. I'll get you to give me a hand to do it.
But that is a good point, actually. If you're using jigs on the tools, they eventually get that short that you can't get the jig onto them there. So, I just grind the back. Another little thing with these is that get rid of these sharp corners off here. Just put them across a lineature or a sander or something like that, because if you're using these a long time, you end up with 2 lovely grooves across your little finger here that are cut.
Yeah. You talked about the fact that a particular, did you say P&N, I think? Brand were the ones that have the V cut. What is a good brand? Should I go down the path of looking into a replacement? What's a good brand of one that has the other, not the U shape, the one in between? I can't remember what word you use now.
Parabolic.
Parabolic curve. Well, I myself use Henry Taylor's. I think Sorby's are parabolic. They're bowl gouges as well. And I've got a funny feeling.
This one I've got of Dad's is a Robert Sorby, but dare I say, as I said, it was probably bought 40 years, 50 years ago.
Yeah, well, they haven't changed their design much.
What did you say you use, Robbo? Sorry, I missed the name. I was about to write it down.
Henry Taylor. Henry Taylor Super Flute.
For interest, any record power bowl gouges RV flute?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't want them, obviously.
No, I've got a couple of those and I don't like them.
Well, the V-flutes and that were made more to hand sharpen. Like I can sharpen my P&Ns very easily by hand, but trying to set up a jig to do them is damned hard work.
And I've got a Glen Lucas. That's really nice. That's quite a nice gouge.
Yeah, well,
And
that's
it's got-
probably a super flute.
What was that? A Glen Lucas? I've never heard that one.
Yeah, Glen Lucas. I think they're made by who are they made by, Sid?
Oh, now you're asking. They are an offshoot brand from someone else. You're right.
Probably Hamlet, I'd say.
All right. Yes.
Yeah,
That's who it
Hamlet.
is. Yep. Hamlet.
Hamlet are a division of Henry Taylor.
And is there any particular, dare I say, brands or types that will hold up to some rather heavy sharpening better? You know, the whole concept of high whatever it is, steel and, you know, versus others.
Cryo
etc.
steel and stuff like that.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's so many things out there. You know, from my point of view, are they gimmicks? Are they not gimmicks? It's hard to, you know.
Well, the crown cryos are supposed to be pretty good, and I think they are a parabolic flute. They're available from Timber Bits.
They are. That's what I use.
I have a. I can show you the flute. I've got oops.
What were they? The crown.
This one's a crown.
Yeah.
I just can't see what you. Sorry, just moving my visor.
No worries.
Shot it to you on Messenger, Landy.
Yeah, that's a parabolic flute on those.
And this one's got a copper thing. That one's silver. This one's a better metal. It's
Cryo.
they're both cryo, I believe. Oh, high speed steel. Oh no, sorry.
Well, the black
It's just
handled
One's M42.
the black
Yeah,
hand,
one's M42, I think.
the black handled one is a cryo chisel, and I think the other one's just high speed steel. I'm not sure.
No,
But
they're
if you
both cryo, but I think this one's M42.
Oh yeah,
This
Right.
one's still a powdered metal, I believe, but it's not an M42.
right.
What-
So
I mean,
Landy,
what-
if you
Yeah.
Landy, if you stick with Hamlet, Crown, or Henry Taylor, you can't go far wrong.
Okay. I'll have a look. I might as well price it while I dare I say.
And Neil's just commented to remember that the higher grade steels can't be sharpened on a normal grinding wheel. They can only be done on a CBN.
That's right. Dead right.
Valid point, and I don't have a CBN.
I sharpened mine on a normal white stone.
Yeah.
So I
If
don't know
you're
that's the same.
gentle with them, yes, you can.
So
Once
what's
you've got
the,
them shaped,
what's the difference? Like why one versus like I would have thought the grinding wheels are the CBN grinding wheels are stronger and are more likely. Would the white ones just not do the sharpening?
Well,
Thus
you just tend to wear the white ones out quicker. That's all.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, okay.
I think there's heat in the issue as well, right?
Yeah.
You don't get the heat off the CBN wheel. Is that right?
No, frogs. I can overheat a wheel. I can overheat a tool on a CBN wheel as well. It's in these two things here. They're attached to your arms. All right. It's called pressure.
Okay.
I read.
The lighter
Sorry,
the touch, the better you sharpen.
I read that they were saying with the powdered metals and the M42 steel that some manufacturers claim the blade will last 8 times longer. But I read that doing this bloke's research, it was 1.5 times longer.
Exactly.
Apparently on metal lathes, it does last longer. But when you're dealing with wood, it does not last much longer, apparently.
It's a funny thing because steel, when they're machining steel on metal lathes, it's constant pressure and constant tension on the tool. On wood turning, it's not.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about, sintered metal or powdered metal in the tools, they're the 42s.
Yes.
And then, look, as far as I'm concerned, if they cut, they cut. They're sharp.
Yeah.
And the best way, as I said, it's in your two hands how you sharpen. And in
Yeah.
your eye, of course.
My other one is this one's just a cheap HSS steel, which I tried to put an English grind on, but I think it's too. I think maybe those wings are too swept back. Sorry, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah. No, you've got to straighten it up a little bit, Rob, and tighten up
Yes.
the angle a little bit.
Yes.
In fact,
I just measured and it was like 50 degrees. It needs to be about 70. Is that right?
yeah, about that. Yep. They're very steep, but that actually is a good use for the cheap Chinese chisels because
Yes.
you only use them for 1 or 2 cuts, and that's about it.
Yes.
What are you laughing at, Justin?
Robbo, I've got a question.
Yep.
So on the well, this could be controversial, right? But I've got a Pro Edge, and on the Pro Edge, if you do a long grind on the Pro Edge, it adds 10 degrees to your bevel. So if you put into the set to set it up at 45 and then choose the long grind on it,
Yep.
you end up with a 55-degree bevel on the front. Does the Tormek do the same, or does it
No.
keep your original 45?
Right. It's not controversial. I know a lot of people use the Pro Edge, and they love them. I don't from an economic point of view. Like I said, I had one and I sold it because it was just costing me too much in belts. Like when you're sharpening every 17 to 30 seconds, it just wears out belts like nothing on earth. And the only thing that you can do is get one that's ground to your satisfaction. Get a tool that's ground to your satisfaction the way you want it, and then colour the bevel in like I've done in my sharpening videos, so that you can sit it against it to get your bevel angle right and your side angle. Now, generally, the further away from the wheel you are, the longer the side angle will be. And then you use the jig itself to set the nose angle. So your nose angle, most jigs are number 2, like the one that Landy has, which is the true grind, is number 2 setting on it. So the Tormek is number 2 on the jig itself. And it's the distance the bar is away from the wheel, what your angle grind is going to be, the amount of swept back wing you're going to get.
So Adam, are you talking about the cylindrical jig? Yeah. So why do you go back there rather than the front one?
It's just become a habit for my bowl gouges, but I mean it doesn't create a grind that is massively swept back.
Right. Well, if you wait on, I'll just get my sword. I'll get my Tormek jig. Wait on.
But that third hole doesn't make much difference to the sweep back. It only makes a difference to the front bevel. If you grind on the front hole, you can have the same sweep back on the wings, but you'll have a better bevel angle.
So on the front hole, it's like that. It does make a difference. It goes back quite a way, actually. Different.
Yeah. What I would be doing is trying it in the different holes, and then adjust this. Then adjust this to get your where am I? There.
Yeah.
Just adjust that to get your nose angle. All right, to get it on 45.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's actually a Tormek jig. That one.
Yeah, they've just moved it. This one with the red knob isn't made by Tormek anymore, but it's the same, yeah?
No, I just noticed that.
But it's the same. It's no different, right? They're just getting it made somewhere else. Yeah, Chris Parker, when I had a lesson with Chris Parker, he gave me a setting that wasn't official, that you can just straighten it out to maintain the bevel.
That's what you got to do, dude. That's what you got to do.
Okay.
So
Right.
it's your bar length away from the wheel, basically
Yep.
that sets your wing length, and it's the angle on the jig that sets your nose angle, your bevel angle,
Right.
and you just
Yeah.
play with it. So
I keep, although I keep grinding pieces of my jig away by the look of it. Look.
Yeah, same.
It's not making my
Guess
chisel,
what?
my gouges any sharper.
guess what? You're not Robinson
Oh, wow.
Crusoe.
Hey, you've not got much left there, have you?
No, well, I haven't ground that away. I haven't ground it away, but you can see on the edge there's little nicks there where I've caught the wheel getting the sweep.
Yeah.
And Felicity will be able to answer this. The amount of swing that you need to sharpen an Ellsworth jig, an Ellsworth grind on a chisel with the jig is absolutely phenomenal. You've got to get it right over one side and then step about 3 steps back and swing it around to get it around to the other side.
And on the Sorby Pro Edge, the motor almost gets in the way if you don't have the belt sitting in the right spot.
Yeah, unless you can do this, right, which is take it out. Because once it's out of the handle, it gets a little bit easier.
Yeah, you capitalist.
Show off.
If it's not tied down and it's got a price on it, I'll probably buy it. Yeah.
That's the wood turner's lament, mate.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if there's no other questions, I shall sign off for the night. Thank you all for coming. I hope it's been entertaining and educational. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to message me on Facebook. I'll answer any questions. Or if I can't, I'll point you towards somebody that can.
So there's just a comment there from Ricky's Rocket that he reckons Adam can't shoot straight because he looks like a Star Wars super trooper who can't hit anything they shoot at. So
Yeah. All right. Good night, folks.
Thank you for the lesson, Robbo.
Bye.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye, everyone.
hello, Robbo's dropped out without ending the live.
He's done that before, eh?
Yeah, all the time.
He's back.
He's back.
Radio. End broadcast. Good night, everybody.